What if the one meant for you wasn't from Earth? What if love could bloom in the freezing silence of an alien world, between two souls who were never supposed to meet? Tonight, you're not just listening to a story, you're stepping into a universe of forbidden bonds, glowing hearts, and emotions too strong to stay silent. Welcome to Beyond the Stars. If you're ready to feel, to fall, and to follow a fire that spans galaxies, stay with us till the very end. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because this is just the beginning. Chapter 1. When the snow calls, the wind on Lumea didn't howl. It sang. A long, eerie chorus drifted across the endless plains of blue-white ice, weaving through jagged crystal peaks and hollowed chasms like the mourning of ghosts. Nico pulled his thermal cloak tighter, boots crunching over ancient frost as the tracker in his glove blinked erratically. "Signal's fading," he muttered, tapping the screen. The comms had gone dead 30 minutes ago, maybe more. Time was hard to track here. Daylight didn't exist in the conventional sense. Just a pale cyan glow bleeding through the clouded sky like a dim memory of a sun. He was 22. Too young for this mission, most of the crew said, but too stubborn to back down. A gifted thermal engineer with a knack for impossible calculations and instinctual machine work, Nico had earned his place. What he hadn't earned was getting separated during a plasma storm on his first day planetside. "Stupid," he whispered to himself, scanning the frozen landscape. The air shimmered faintly, a sign the storm wasn't over. It was just catching its breath. The terrain beneath his boots sloped down into a canyon laced with broken ice columns. Something about it tugged at him. Anomalous heat signatures maybe, or intuition. He couldn't tell anymore where his science ended and his gut began. Then he saw it, a strange shape jutting from the frost, partially buried beneath translucent ice. Organic, smooth, almost humanoid. He stumbled toward it, half in awe, half in disbelief. It was a figure encased in ice, no, in crystallized plasma, frozen mid-bloom. The glow around it pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Female form, delicate, elongated. Skin the color of starlight. Hair like strands of molten silver caught mid-motion. And her face serene like sleeping through centuries. Nico dropped to his knees. His breath fogged the transparent shells separating them. She was beautiful in a way that was entirely alien and utterly hypnotic. "Are you alive?" he whispered. No answer. He pulled his thermal tool from his belt, set it to lowest heat, and aimed the pulse at the thinnest part of the ice. A hiss. A soft crack. Then another. The glow around her brightened. The ice gave way, and she opened her eyes. Nico fell backward, heart pounding. The girl, no, the creature, looked at him. Her irises were rings of soft violet, flecked with glimmering gold. Not human, not hostile, just watching. The air around her shimmered with rising heat, contradicting the frozen hell around them. She tried to speak, but nothing came. Her lips parted, but the sound was in his head, not his ears. A pulse. A whisper. "You burn warm." Nico blinked, stunned. "What? How are you?" She took a step forward and stumbled. He caught her out of reflex, and her hand touched his wrist. A burst of warmth exploded under his skin, not searing, but resonant, like fire with a soul. He gasped. A glowing mark flared on his arm where she touched him, a faint sigil of intertwining curves and radiant points. "I don't understand," he breathed. She looked into his eyes with something close to sorrow, or maybe farewell. Then she stepped back. The glow around her dimmed. The wind surged again, hissing down the canyon. And just before she vanished into the swirling snow, her voice, if it could be called that, echoed in his mind as clear as thought itself. "When you burn." Then nothing. Only snow. Only silence. Only the cold that suddenly felt unbearably lonely. He was found 6 hours later, barely conscious and half frozen, by the search team combing the southern ridge. They dragged him back to base. He told them what he saw. They didn't believe him. Hallucination, plasma exposure, stress-induced neural misfire. The explanations were endless and clinical. But they couldn't explain the mark on his arm. It never faded. And Nico never forgot. Chapter 2. The burn that stays 10 years. 10 years since the storm. 10 years since he saw her, if she was ever real at all. Nico stared at his wrist, where the faint sigil still shimmered under the skin. Not always visible, just in certain lights, or when his pulse quickened, like a secret waiting to wake up again. He pressed two fingers to it, absently tracing the curves. Interlocking spirals, thin lines radiating outward like fire caught in a frozen dance. Doctors called it a plasma scar. Scanners said it wasn't even organic. But nothing ever explained why it still pulsed with warmth when he dreamed of her. He remembered her eyes most clearly, violet rings, the color of galaxies, watching him without fear, watching through him. Her voice had never faded either. 3 words, embedded in memory like a code. When you burn. But what the hell did that mean? Luma had changed. It was still frozen, still orbiting the edge of nowhere, but corporations had found interest again. Plasma storms were growing stronger, and underneath the ice were signs of deep planet thermal reservoirs, enough to power cities. Someone wanted to dig. Someone wanted to own. Nico hadn't been to the planet since the incident, but when the application for a senior thermal consultant on the Lumea Phase 2 initiative crossed his desk, he didn't hesitate. The others at the spaceport had called him quiet, focused. A little too intense, someone said. He didn't care. The moment the descent shuttle pierced Lumea's atmosphere again, and that haunting blue-white glow returned through the viewport, his chest tightened with a mix of fear and longing. She was here, or had been. The new base was bigger, more stable. Drills ran 24/7. Engineers studied thermal veins and magnetic fluxes like kids dissecting a firework. But Nico didn't care about plasma energy, not really. He wanted to find her. He reviewed the old data logs from his original expedition, the storm coordinates, the scan locations, even his own vitals from the hours before collapse. The exact coordinates where he'd found her had been redacted from official records. Of course they had, but he remembered. It took him 3 days to slip away. The outer zones were off limits unless part of an authorized scouting mission. But he had his own exosuit now, modified for long-range survival. It hummed around him like a second skin, regulating his body heat, enhancing strength, keeping his vitals steady. He'd built it himself back on Mars. He left under cover of a polar eclipse, the sky dimming to a twilight bruised with indigo and cold fire. The snow swallowed his tracks within minutes. As he walked, the temperature sensors beeped irregularly, fluctuations in the cold, warm spots too brief, too scattered to be natural. He followed them anyway. His wrist began to itch, then sting. The mark was glowing again. By the time he reached the canyon, everything was eerily familiar. The sharp descent, the wind-chiseled crystal spires, the silence. He paused at the edge and looked down. Something flickered in the depths, not light, not fire. A pulse, a drum. He descended carefully, every step pressing deeper into memory. When he reached the spot where he'd first seen her encased in ice, he found only fractured crystal and a shallow depression where the body might have been. He dropped to his knees, heart pounding. "Are you here?" Nothing answered, just wind. Then, a whisper. Not in the air, not in sound, in him. "You returned." The voice was softer now, clearer, like a thought wrapped in warmth. He looked up. She stood at the edge of the shadows, wrapped in pale light. Arlen, not as bright as before, not as strong. Her body trembled, light flickering faintly beneath translucent skin, but she was alive and watching him. Again. He stood slowly, unsure of what to say. "Arlen," he whispered, almost choking on her name. "You're real." She tilted her head, curious. A strange, delicate gesture. She didn't speak with her mouth, only the quiet thread of thought between them. The mark stayed. He raised his wrist. "You left it. I didn't know what it meant." Arlen stepped closer. Every movement was elegant, weightless, like walking through dreams. Her skin shimmered faintly with bioluminescent veins, duller than he remembered. She reached out, not quite touching, and the space between their fingers buzzed with warmth. Then she faltered. Her glow dimmed. Nico stepped forward instinctively. "You're weak." She looked at him, not pleading, not afraid, just open. "The cold grows. I fade." His gut twisted. "How are you still alive?" Her gaze held his. "You burned, and I remembered. The wind stirred, snow swirled between them. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned her forehead gently to his. No contact, just near enough for heat to pass. And in that fragile moment, he saw flashes, not images, but feelings. Loneliness stretching, centuries long. The pain of being the last. The memory of warmth in an ocean of silence. And him, always him. The moment passed. Arlen stepped back, her light flickering dangerously low. Nico reached out. Wait, don't disappear again. Her voice returned to his mind, faint but certain. If you stay, you must burn again. Then she turned and walked into the ice tunnels, leaving only a shimmer of violet light behind her. Nico stood frozen. Burn again? He looked at the glowing mark on his arm. It pulsed once, brighter than ever. Something deep inside him stirred. Not fear, not grief, hope. For the first time in years. Chapter 3, Light Beneath the Ice, and Nico followed her. There was no decision to make, only instinct. The kind that lives in your bones, not your thoughts. The tunnel into which Arlen vanished wasn't on any of the official base maps. It wound downward in long, spiraling slopes, carved not by drills or tectonics, but something older, sculpted by time and elements that no human had measured. The walls shimmered faintly, laced with mineral veins that pulsed with slow, heartbeat-like rhythms. Every now and then, his suit would register a flicker of heat that vanished as soon as it was detected. Glitches, according to the system. But Nico didn't believe in glitches anymore. The deeper he went, the quieter it became. Even the wind above had faded into a ghost of memory. Only his breath, measured and calm through the filtered mask, reminded him that he was still in a body, still human. And then he saw it. The chamber opened suddenly, like stepping out of a cave and into a cathedral made of light and silence. The ceiling arched high above him, lined with luminescent crystal spires that stretched like frozen lightning. Pools of liquid ice glowed gently around the edges of the floor, their surface rippling despite the absence of wind. In the center stood Arlen, but now her glow had changed. She pulsed gently, soft blues, warm violets, like a dying ember struggling to reignite. Her posture was graceful but frail, as if her body were a breath away from fading into the air. Nico approached slowly, and as he stepped closer, the temperature around him began to rise. Not from his suit, but from her. She turned to him. You came through the frost. Her voice was a thought again, a vibration inside his chest rather than his ears. It resonated deeper than speech ever could. I didn't come to leave you again, Nico said quietly. Arlen tilted her head, studying him. Her fingers twitched slightly at her side, then opened, inviting. He took another step forward. I need to understand. What are you? What did you do to me? She closed her eyes. The sigil on his wrist flared in response, reacting to her presence like a tuning fork. We are Valyri. We live in warmth. We love through it. She opened her eyes again. The look in them was not human, but it felt human. An echo of loneliness wrapped in grace. When you touched me, when you gave heat without knowing, you left a mark. You opened the bond. Nico looked down at the mark, pulsing with a slow rhythm now, like it had found its missing half. What kind of bond? He asked. Arlen stepped closer. Her hand hovered near his chest. The kind that can only form when the heart has burned, when it has broken. The words struck deeper than he expected. He saw a flicker of her memories, an entire race gone silent, buried beneath ice. Companions turned to frost, emotions locked in crystal. He realized with quiet awe that Arlen might be the last of her kind. You've been alone all this time, he said. Yes, until you. Her voice shook with that thought, not with fear, but something heavier, hope. They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by glowing ice, the hum of ancient energy resonating through the walls. Then Arlen turned and walked to the far end of the chamber. A wall of solid ice stood before her, different from the rest, opaque, pulsing with a deep inner glow. She pressed her hand to it, and the ice shimmered as if waking from a long sleep. A door formed, though no mechanism moved, just ice yielding to intent. She looked back at him. This is the beginning of the tether. Nico followed without hesitation. Beyond the door was a vast hall unlike anything he'd seen before. It wasn't made of ice, it was made of light. Walls curved in impossible angles, flickering with ancient warmth. Symbols drifted lazily through the air, glowing glyphs that rearranged themselves with every breath. The temperature here was comfortable, almost balmy. His suit had stopped regulating altogether. Arlen stepped into the center, and a platform lit beneath her feet. This is the heart of what remains. She reached into the air and light swirled around her fingers, forming images, brief flashes from a world long gone. A city beneath the frost, alive with bioluminescent towers. Valyri walking side by side, their light interwoven. A great storm sweeping through the stars. Silence falling, ice growing. And then, her, alone. Then the image shifted. Nico. His face, 10 years younger, eyes wide with fear and wonder. Holding her as she emerged from crystal sleep. I didn't know, he murmured. Arlen turned to him. You burned. You woke me. You began the bond. Nico's voice dropped to a whisper. What happens now? Her light dimmed slightly. Now we complete it, or we let it fade. He swallowed hard. Complete it, she nodded. Through the rite of resonance, through shared fire, but only if you carry the pain needed to feed the flame. Nico felt the words settle deep in his gut. All his years of loss, of silence, of drifting through life without letting anyone close. Maybe it had been preparing him for this, for her. His voice was low, certain. I've burned more than you know. Arlen stepped toward him again. This time her fingers brushed his. The warmth between them flared, not as fire but as connection. Not just bodies, souls. Then you may enter the tether. The chamber center opened like a blooming flower, and the ground lit with swirling tendrils of light, waiting for two forms, side by side. As Nico stepped forward to stand beside her, a single thought echoed between them, shared not in words, but in emotion. We are no longer alone. Chapter 4, The Tether of Fire and Frost. The platform beneath Nico's feet began to glow, brilliant white lines spiraling out in perfect symmetry, wrapping around him and Arlen like a cocoon of light. The air trembled softly as if the chamber itself were drawing breath. Nico's heart pounded, not from fear, but from something far deeper. Anticipation, vulnerability, and awe. Arlen stood beside him, luminous and still, her pale violet eyes fixed on his. For the first time, her form shimmered with steady light, no longer flickering like a dying ember. She's stronger here, he realized. This place feeds her. But it was more than that. It was him, his presence, the heat between them. The tether, Arlen said, not with her mind this time, but aloud. Her voice was strange to hear, fragile and melodic, as if language were a newly remembered song. Nico blinked. You're speaking. Her lips curved into the barest smile. Because you hear. Before he could ask what that meant, the chamber responded to her presence. A pillar of radiant energy rose from the center of the platform. Within it, flames twisted. Not orange, but silver, violet, and deep blue, colors he'd never seen in fire before. They didn't burn outward. They pulled inward, like stars collapsing into themselves. Arlen stepped forward and placed her hands in the flame. Her light flared. This is the first rite, she said. Resonance through remembrance. She looked at him. To complete the bond, you must open your pain. Nico stiffened. Open it? How? By feeling it again, fully. The fire pulsed in time with her words, and suddenly the chamber dimmed. The warmth between them narrowed into a thread, and the edges of Nico's vision blurred. Then, he was no longer standing on Lumea. He was 12 again. His mother's hand was cold, too cold. Machines beeped softly. Her skin, once warm and olive-toned, was gray beneath the hospital lights. She looked at him through tired eyes. Don't close off, Nico, she whispered. You'll need to burn, even when it hurts. He shook his head. I don't want to burn. A tear slipped down her cheek. Then you'll freeze. The memory shattered. Nico stumbled back into the present, breath ragged, chest tight. He blinked and found Arlen watching him, her expression unreadable. Her glow dimmed as if she felt his grief. I hated that moment, he whispered. I shut everything off after she died. I didn't want to feel again. Arlen stepped forward and gently touched the side of his face. Her skin was warm now, truly warm. You were afraid of fire, but it was never the fire that hurt you. Nico closed his eyes. It was losing it. The flame shifted again, wrapping around them both like ribbons of memory. This time, it didn't take Nico into his past. It took him into hers. He gasped. A city of light spread beneath frozen skies. Valeri walking hand in hand, glowing softly, connected by warmth that flowed like language. Then the storms came. Violent waves of plasma winds. Temperatures dropped. Light flickered and died. One by one, the Valeri vanished into ice. Arlen stood alone in the center of a collapsing world. But in her grief, she made a choice. To enter sleep, to preserve her spark, to wait, until someone, somewhere warm enough and broken enough, would find her. The vision faded. They stood face to face again. The mark on Nico's wrist now burned brighter than ever. And across from him, Arlen's light pulsed in sync with it. You waited for me, he said softly. I called, she replied, but only those who have burned can answer. Nico breathed in deeply. And the tether, this bond, it's not just emotion, it's memory, it's pain. Woman choice, Arlen added. A pause, then she extended her hand. If you take this step, you will carry my fire as I carry yours. He looked at her hand, trembling slightly. What happens if I do? You will no longer be entirely human. Part of you will change. You will feel more, sense more. The fire will live in you. And if I don't, she lowered her hand, I will fade. Silence. Nico stared at the flame. For 10 years, he had lived half alive, drifting through projects, careers, even relationships, detached, guarded, always cold, never here. But this wasn't drifting. This was anchoring. He reached out, took her hand, the flame roared. It wasn't pain, it was heat, pure, emotional, raw heat, rushing through him like electricity wrapped in memory. The chamber filled with color and sound as the tether completed. Nico cried out not from agony, but from the overwhelming truth of it. Every scar, every joy, every loss he had buried now had a place to belong. A pulse shot through both of them. Arlen's eyes widened. Her glow exploded outward, wrapping around him. They weren't two beings anymore. Not entirely. Their minds brushed against each other. Not reading thoughts, but feeling shape. Sorrow like glaciers, hope like distant suns, loneliness like hollow winds. And in the center, fire. Shared, balanced, alive. The chamber dimmed again. The flames sank into the platform, and silence returned. But not emptiness. Nico opened his eyes and found Arlen standing there. Brighter, stronger, more real than he had ever seen her. He reached up, touched the side of her face. You're not fading anymore. No, she said, smiling faintly, because you burn now. And this time, when she stepped forward to rest her forehead gently against his, he didn't flinch. Chapter 5. Fire that speaks. For a long moment, the world was still. Nico could feel Arlen's pulse against his, not just physical, but something deeper, like their inner rhythms had aligned. Thoughts no longer had to form to be understood. Emotion moved between them like breath. And for the first time since he'd set foot back on Lumea, he felt warm, truly warm, not just in his body, but in the hollow places inside. They left the resonance chamber slowly. The glow surrounding Arlen had changed. It no longer flickered uncertainly, but flowed with quiet confidence. Even the way she moved had shifted. Less like a drifting ghost, and more like a being waking from a long, deep sleep. As they passed through the crystalline tunnels, Nico noticed something else. The ice walls no longer looked lifeless. They moved. Not like water or wind, but as if responding to their presence, rippling gently with faint color, reflecting back the hues of their connection. Violet for Arlen, deep red-orange for him. The tether, he murmured. It changed me. Arlen nodded. Your fire speaks now. He touched his chest where a soft warmth radiated outward beneath the suit. Is it dangerous? Only if you lie to it. He raised an eyebrow. To the fire? To yourself, she replied. Her words hung in the air like a riddle, but he understood more than he used to. There was no need to speak constantly anymore. There was clarity in shared silence. They emerged at the mouth of the old canyon just as the pale sky darkened into eclipse. Lumea's twin moons crossed in slow orbit, casting strange shadows over the snow. The wind was picking up again. Arlen paused, eyes scanning the ridgeline. Her glow dimmed slightly. "What is it?" Nico asked. She was quiet for a beat. Then, "Others have come. I feel their heat." That stopped him cold. He activated his wrist display. Signals, human life forms. Half a click out. 2. No, 3. "Search party?" he guessed, though his gut already said otherwise. Then the calm in his suit crackled to life. "Nico Lorne, respond. You are outside your designated research zone. This is unauthorized activity. Stand by for retrieval." Nico tapped the mic. "This is Lorne. I'm fine. I'm not returning." A pause, then a clipped, colder voice. "Lieutenant Hale. Corporate security. Not optional, Lorne. This zone has been flagged for Phase 4 extraction. Plasma reserves are active beneath your location. Clear the area." Nico swore under his breath. "They're going to drill here." Arlen looked at him, expression unreadable. "This place is still alive. If they break the crust—" She didn't finish, but he felt it. Catastrophe. Minutes later, the others arrived. 3 figures in reinforced exosuits, weapons holstered but visible. The lead was Hale, tall, sharp-jawed, eyes like polished steel. "You've gone native," Hale said, his tone flat as he scanned Nico up and down. "You were always a little strange, but this is next level." Behind him, the other 2 soldiers looked wary. One even kept glancing at Arlen, whose soft glow cut eerily through the icy fog. Nico stepped in front of her instinctively. "She's not a threat." Hale's gaze sharpened. "You don't get to make that call. She's sentient. She speaks. She has memories. You destroy this canyon, you kill her. And a lot more. She's an anomaly. So's this place. That's why we're here. Orders are to extract plasma cores within 72 hours. He narrowed his eyes. "Unless you'd like to be part of that extraction." Nico's hand clenched. Arlen's voice slipped into his mind like a calming wave. "Fire must not rage. It must be shaped." He breathed in, out. "Just give me time," Nico said, turning back to Hale. "There's something here you don't understand. Let me show you." "Let her show you." Hale chuckled darkly. "I'm not interested in alien ghost stories, Lorne. Either you come with us now or we bring you back frozen stiff." Behind him, one of the soldiers shifted. "Lieutenant, something's weird about the readings. My thermal scanner's glitching. It's reacting to him." Hale blinked, turned his scanner toward Nico. The reading spiked. Body temperature far beyond human norm. Internal conductivity unstable. Bioluminescent response in dermal tissue. "What the hell did you do to yourself?" Nico met his eyes. "I became part of something older than your paycheck." The soldiers hesitated, uncertain. Then the ground rumbled. Not like a quake, like a breath. The canyon walls pulsed with deep internal glow. Bam, boom, boom. Plasma veins waking, ice cracked in jagged lightning patterns. The air sizzled. Arlen stepped forward, hands out. "They have angered the crust." Nico turned back to Hale. "You dig and you wake the whole planet. Not just plasma, memory, structure. You won't survive it." Hale opened his mouth, but before he could speak, a sharp crack split the earth 10 meters to their left. A geyser of light shot up, curling into the sky like a flare of energy. The snow around it turned instantly to steam. The soldiers fell back. Nico grabbed Arlen's arm. "We have to go." She nodded. They ran toward the caves, toward safety. Behind them, the earth kept breathing. Later, deep inside a new cavern, far from the tremors, Nico sat with his back against the wall. Arlen knelt beside a pool of glowing liquid, her hand hovering over its surface. Ripples danced to the rhythm of her pulse. He stared at her. "They won't stop." "No," she said, "but neither will we." She turned to face him. "You are the first to hear us, but you won't be the last." Nico exhaled slowly. He didn't know what was coming, only that the fire inside him was no longer just his. It was hers. It was theirs. And it was just beginning to burn. Chapter 6. The Memory That Defends. The cavern walls hummed softly like the breath of a sleeping giant. Nico sat beside Arlen in the dim glow of bioluminescent pools, the fire still smoldering inside him. It wasn't just warmth anymore. It was awareness. Of her, of the planet, of something vast beneath his feet, that felt like memory turned into matter. You said this world remembers, he said quietly. But what exactly does it remember? Arlen didn't respond right away. She sat cross-legged, fingertips brushing the glowing water, sending ripples that danced along the floor. Then she said, "It remembers pain, and it remembers fire." Her voice was a blend of thought and sound now, easier, more fluent, as if tethering to him had taught her language faster than any neural interface could. "This planet isn't just made of ice," she continued. "It's layered in time. The Valeri built systems that recorded emotion, thought, trauma, not data, feeling. And now it stirs." Nico frowned. "Because of me?" "Because of us," she corrected. "The bond woke it, just as you woke me." He looked at her, studying her face in the soft light. "So what happens if they drill into all that memory?" She turned to meet his eyes. "It defends itself." Outside, the tremors had faded. For now, but Nico knew that was temporary. The plasma signatures in the area had grown volatile. So, Hale wouldn't wait long before ordering the drills to proceed. Corporate timelines didn't yield to mystery. "We need proof," Nico said, standing. "Something to make them stop, something undeniable." Arlen rose gracefully, her glow steady. "There is one place, the Vault of Echoes." He blinked. "That sounds extremely ominous." A small smile touched her lips. "To you. To us, it was sacred. Can we reach it?" She nodded. "But the path is not stable. It was sealed after the Great Silence." "The extinction of your people?" "Yes." The weight of it hung in the air like a ghost. Nico stepped closer. "Then let's reopen it." The journey took them deep beneath the known geography of Lumea. Arlen guided him through labyrinthine tunnels, using touch and intuition rather than maps. At times, she would stop, place her hand against a wall of ice, and listen. Then they would change direction. Nico's suit began picking up strange readings. Ambient emotional energy, the system called it. He disabled the alerts. He didn't need tech to feel the tension building under the surface. The further they went, the more the walls changed, from raw crystal to smooth carved stone, etched with patterns that pulsed in time with their footsteps. "They're reacting to you," Arlen said quietly. "Why me?" "Because you carry both flame and fracture. The vault only opens to those who've burned from the inside." He didn't fully understand what that meant, but he knew it was true. They reached the chamber after what felt like hours. It wasn't large, but it was alive. The air buzzed. In the center stood a monolithic structure, almost like a tree, except it was made of translucent stone, with glowing strands hanging from its branches like veins of light. "The core of recollection," Arlen whispered. "The heart of our archive. It contains every tether formed before the silence." Nico stepped toward it, drawn like iron to a magnet. "Will it show us?" "Yes, but only what you can withstand." He hesitated, then reached out. The moment his hand touched the core, the chamber exploded with sensation. 1,000 voices all at once. Laughter, grief, triumph, loss. Whole lives played across his mind in fragments. Two Valeri entwined in a spiral of light, sharing a kiss made of memory. A mother holding her child's last warmth before the storm. A defender igniting his body into flame to stop the encroaching ice. And then, himself. Nico stood in the same canyon, a future projection, fire radiating from his core, shielding something, someone. Human soldiers surrounded him. The planet shook, then blackness. He gasped and stumbled back. Arlen caught him. What? What was that?" "Possible memory, potential futures," she said softly. "The vault does not distinguish between past and might be." Nico wiped sweat from his brow. "Did you see it too?" "Yes," she said, voice quiet. "You stood between destruction and choice." He looked at her. "Then we need to make them choose." They returned to the surface at dawn. The sky was a sickly orange, plasma storms gathering again. The new drills had been set up on the far ridge. Dust clouds rose as heavy machines rumbled into position. Nico activated his comm. "Hale, this is Lorne. We need to talk, in person." There was silence, then a crackle. "You better have something good," Hale snapped, "because we're breaching the crust in 1 hour." Hale met them at the canyon edge, arms crossed, flanked by 2 guards. You look like hell, he muttered. Thanks, Nico said flatly. I've seen it. He pulled out a small capsule, a portable projection unit. He activated it. A hologram bloomed between them. Not data charts, not scans. Memories, images from the vault, the fire souls of the Valeri, the encroaching ice, the self-sacrifice. Hale's eyes narrowed. What am I looking at? Proof, Nico said. This world isn't just a resource. It's history, consciousness. And if you drill into it, you're not just breaking rock, you're waking something. One of the guards leaned in, whispering to Hale, Sir, our systems are glitching again. Thermal anomalies everywhere, seismic pressure rising. Hale stared at the projection, then at Nico. This doesn't change orders. Nico stepped forward. Then you'll have to go through me. And as he spoke, the sigil on his wrist flared, not just visible, but radiant. Heat rolled off him in waves, not human, not anymore. Hale took a step back. Then the ground shook again. Harder, louder. The sky split with lightning. Lightning, not from clouds, but from the planet itself. Arlen stood behind Nico, glowing brighter than ever. The air around her shimmered with protective energy. The wind bent around her like a shield. And somewhere deep beneath them, the planet murmured, Remember, Chapter 7, we burn together. The tremor didn't stop, it deepened. It rolled beneath their feet like a beast turning in its sleep, ancient, slow, and unwilling to be disturbed. Hale took a step back, his normally confident voice suddenly tight. What the hell is happening to the ground? Nico stood his ground. Lumea's waking up. That's not possible. It's not supposed to be possible, Nico snapped. But you never bothered to ask what this planet really is. You just wanted to strip it. He stepped closer, voice low but laced with fire. You saw what I showed you. The memories, the defenses. It's alive, Hale. This place isn't some dead rock. And that thing behind you? Hale jerked his chin toward Arlen. What exactly is she? Your girlfriend? A hallucination in a pretty shell? Nico didn't answer. Arlen did. She stepped forward, glow steady, voice calm. I am Valeri, last of the Fireborn, keeper of memory. He is tethered to me, and through him, your world has been warned. The soldiers' fingers twitched near their weapons. Nico held up a hand. Don't. I'm telling you, if you hurt her, you wake the core, and we all burn. Another tremor shook the ridge. Behind them, the ice cracked in a jagged spiral, steam rising in ghostly tendrils. Hale looked around, calculating. Then finally, you have 1 hour, then I'm calling in the drill teams. You want to stop this? Show me something I can take back to command. Something irrefutable. Nico's jaw tightened. He didn't nod, he just turned away. They returned to the canyon floor, the sun now just a pale blur behind thickening clouds. Nico didn't speak for a long time, not until they reached the mouth of a forgotten tunnel where the heat shimmered faintly in the air. Then finally, they're going to drill anyway. Arlen nodded, unless the planet stops them first. He turned to her. Would it really do that? Would it destroy everything just to protect itself? She stepped closer. Would you? Nico didn't answer, but he knew the truth. Later, they sat beside a thermal spring far below the canyon. The water bubbled gently, glowing with the same soft light as her skin. The cave around them breathed with slow pulses, like lungs made of stone. Nico unzipped part of his suit, letting the heat seep into his skin. The mark on his wrist was no longer just a symbol. It moved now, subtly shifting with the rhythm of his thoughts. I don't know who I am anymore, he said. You are still you, Arlen replied, but not fully human. No, something more. He looked at her. Does that scare you? She tilted her head. No, it humbles me. You carry my people's flame now. You carry me. A pause, then she added softly, and I carry you. He leaned back, letting his eyes close. You said the tether makes us feel what the other feels. Yes. Then what do you feel now? She was quiet for a moment. Then she stepped forward and knelt beside him. Her fingers brushed the edge of his wrist. Warmth flared instantly, not physical, but emotional. A whisper of grief, a surge of wonder, a quiet thrum of need. I feel your loneliness, she said. How it settled into you like frost. How you stopped hoping someone could truly see you. She moved closer. I feel your guilt for not saving your mother, for surviving when others didn't. Her hand moved to his chest over his heart. And I feel this. His breath hitched. What is it? She met his eyes. Your fire, the part that still wants to be loved. The air thickened, not with danger, but with connection. He reached up and cupped her cheek, fingers brushing the soft glow beneath her skin. You said the tether was choice, he whispered, that we could let it fade. I don't want it to, she said, barely audible. Me neither. Then without words, they leaned in. Their foreheads touched first, soft, familiar, then lips. It wasn't passionate or desperate. It was warm, slow, like two stars finding each other again after centuries apart. They stayed like that for a long time. When they finally pulled apart, Nico didn't speak. He didn't need to, but Arlen did. There is one place left, she said quietly, the original convergence point. The first tether formed between Valeri and another race. If we reach it, we might be able to awaken the planet's will, fully. You mean, talk to it? In a way, but it will only open to tethered souls, aligned, unified. Nico nodded. I'm ready. They packed what they needed. Thermal packs, nutrient capsules, light shields. Arlen led the way. The path was long. The air grew denser the deeper they went. Time blurred. Colors changed. At some point, even gravity shifted subtly, as if the rules of nature bent near the core of memory. And then they reached it, a chamber carved in concentric circles with a dais at the center. Upon it, two hollow forms, like statues, but Nico knew better. They were like us, Arlen said softly. One Valeri, one something else. They fused, not in body, in spirit. Their tether lives on. Nico stepped onto the dais. The mark on his wrist flared like fire exposed to wind. Arlen joined him. A low hum started around them. Then light, then voice, but not a voice. A presence while on, why do you wake us? Nico's heart thundered. He looked up into the glowing walls. We seek peace, he said. We seek understanding. The voice replied, then burn together. Chapter 8. When you burn, the chamber pulsed around them like a heartbeat made of light. Nico stood at the center of the dais with Arlen beside him, both wrapped in quiet flame. His orange-gold heat, her soft violet glow. Their marks flared in unison, their breathing steady, synchronized. Above them, the great presence stirred. You burn, you tether, you wake the core. The voice wasn't loud, it simply was. Ancient, endless, and deep enough to fold memory into matter. Nico tightened his grip on Arlen's hand. We don't want destruction. We want understanding, protection, peace. Peace is earned in fire. Memory demands pain. Are you willing to remember what others buried? Arlen stepped forward, her voice clear. We are. In the next instant, Nico felt the chamber fall away. He and Arlen stood in a space beyond space, inside the planet's mind. A memory stream. Images flooded him. Entire generations of Valeri sharing warmth, linking thoughts like music. Then came the colonizers. Metal ships, drills, disregard, and the core flinching. Not because of hate, because of loss. Nico understood now. Lumea wasn't just reacting to the drilling. It was mourning. Reacting the only way it knew how, by freezing itself solid, locking memory beneath frost. You sealed yourself to survive, he whispered. You turned grief into ice. A low rumble responded, agreement. And you carry fire with grief inside. Nico looked down at his mark. The fire wasn't power. It was vulnerability. Back in the real world, alarms were sounding. From the ridge, Hale stared at his tablet in disbelief. Seismic levels spiking. Power readings are off scale. Core temperature up 20 degrees in under a minute. A voice from command buzzed in his ear. Lieutenant, report. I think we've triggered a planetary defense system, Hale muttered. Behind him, the canyon floor began to split. Not violently, but with purpose. A spiral of ice cracked open, revealing a lattice of glowing structures beneath, like roots made of memory. Sir, one of his guards said nervously, what do we do? Hale clenched his jaw, Then he saw them. Nico and Arlen, rising from the open dais, wrapped in light. Hale raised his rifle. Nico raised his hand. "Don't," he said quietly. "You're not human anymore," Hale said, unsure whether it was fear or awe in his voice. "I'm still me," Nico replied. "Just more." Arlen stepped forward. "The planet is awake, but it is watching, waiting. It will not strike unless you force its hand." The earth rumbled again, but it wasn't threat. It was question. Nico turned to Hale. "You have a choice." Hale stared at them. "They'll never believe any of this back home." "Then show them." Later, in a transmission beam from orbit, the world saw what had happened. Not raw data, not seismic charts, but a memory. One clip extracted from the vault and sent through Nico's suit. Two beings, one Valeri, one human, joining hands as an entire city lit up behind them. A connection not forged through conquest, but compassion. It rippled through screens across systems. And it changed everything. Luma was spared, declared a sentient archive world, protected by interstellar law. The drilling was halted. The corporations pulled back. And Nico stayed, not because he had to, because he wanted to. Months later, he and Arlen walked along the glowing canyon at twilight. The planet no longer trembled. It breathed again. Slowly, cautiously, new growth had begun to stir. Luminescent vines, thawing crystal trees, long dormant Valeri tech reactivating in quiet pulses. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked softly. "Sometimes," Nico replied, "but I never belong there like I do here." She smiled. "That's what the fire is, belonging." They stopped beside a shallow pool where their reflections shimmered side by side. He touched his wrist, where the mark now wrapped around his arm like a living tattoo. "Do you think we'll ever find others like us?" he asked. She tilted her head. "Maybe, but we don't need to. We already found each other." That night, they lay side by side in a chamber of old stone and new light. The flame between them didn't roar. It glowed, steady, constant, shared. And as Arlen rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, she whispered, "You burn." And Nico, smiling in the dark, replied, "Only because of you." Epilogue. Arlen's fire. The ice no longer frightens me. Not because it's gone. It never truly leaves Lumea. It lingers in the canyons, clings to the sky, breathes in the cracks between moments. It is memory, cold, quiet, endless. But now, and I am not alone in it. I used to drift in the dark, a spark beneath crystal, dreaming of warmth I thought I imagined, of a face I'd never seen, of hands that would reach through the silence and offer more than light. They came. He came. Nico Lorne. Not a warrior, not a prophet, just a man who had burned quietly for too long, carrying scars beneath his skin like secret songs. I felt them before I knew his name. I knew the ache before I knew the language. When he touched the ice that held me, I knew he was the one. Not because he was strong, but because he had suffered, because he had survived. And when he chose to stay, to tether his flame to mine, I felt the planet exhale for the first time in centuries. Now, every time I wake beside him, I listen to his heartbeat and think, this is what my people were waiting for. Not salvation, not conquest, but connection. Something as simple and as sacred as two souls holding each other through the cold. I walk the surface of Lumea now without fear. The planet does not call me relic anymore. It calls me keeper. And I answer warm, alive, whole, because he burns, and now so do I. Thanks for traveling with us here at Beyond the Stars, where lonely hearts find each other through light, memory, and the vastness of the universe. If today's story moved you, leave a comment, share it with a fellow dreamer, and keep the fire burning. Until next time, we'll be waiting for you among the stars.